I had a stroke and I lost my voice, so thank you for listening. My husband and I were enjoying a nice, quiet retirement on the coast of Maine when a letter to the editor from a Camden school board member telling of a dangerous education program changed our lives. Seeking more information, I called the author, Mrs. Isabete, and was invited to her home to view the questionable materials. Mentioning it to my neighbors, I was warned, oh, you've got to stay away from her. She's trouble. She's not that kind of a person you'd want to be with. So it was with some trepidation that I approached that lovely white house with the great American flag blowing in the breeze in front and opened the door after my knock to find a kindred soul. That afternoon, I remember sitting on the Victorian sofa, surrounded by books and papers, and hearing things I didn't know before, but filling in the pieces of the puzzle that had been missing. I found out that there was an agenda. There's a reason for getting rid of all the tried and true methods of teaching and the good textbooks we'd always used, to try these new textbooks, which were loaded with faults. One chapter would contradict another. It was terrible. And they would make us have new vocabularies. Even the second graders had to learn long words to spell with as many as 10 letters. It was unheard of. And there were so many reasons for having all these new teaching strategies which didn't work. One year there are 4 different modern math programs. 4. And we had to investigate them all. And I went back to the good old tried and true book. Well, hearing that there are even more reasons I didn't understand, I just had to know more. And I wanted to know more. But this is the lady who had all the answers. So visiting the classroom, I had not been able to see the forest for the trees. Now I was going to find the trees. There was much to reassess and to learn. Humanism. I thought there must be the people with a lot of money who want to do something nice for people, like establish libraries or give money to causes. But no, I was really ignorant. And I had to learn about the standard stonewalling of the school superintendents, the deliberate denigrating of parents who were merely asking questions, the new basics. What's wrong with the old ones? Elimination of wholesome competition in academics, and of course emphasis on education ad infinitum. Mrs. Isabete knew of informative books, pamphlets, and newsletters written by courageous, insightful people across the land who had been castigated by the authorities. Thank God for those pioneers who bravely published, sharing their knowledge and insights of what must be done. And we've lost quite a few of them last few years. Where was I when all this was going on? In the classroom, in the community. Where are the parents and taxpayers? At home, the workplace, and the community. Well, don't the school administrators have some sort of responsibility to tell their citizen employers what's going on? Why don't they? We don't insist, that's why. Those papers indicated a reversal of traditional and moral values, plus the highly unsuitable psychological technique of role-playing that I was very familiar with as a nurse instructor at Boston Psychopathic Hospital during the war, and also I had written my thesis about it, which, by the way, was used as a college textbook because they were waiting for the Shafters to get their book done, which they waited 2 more years for it. 600 pages. It was just padded with case histories. They really didn't know their subject. because I did mine in 28 pages. My husband and I had twice fought sex education to a standstill back in Newtown, Connecticut, where we lived with our children. And we had fought SIECUS, that was the Sex Information Education Council of the United States. Now, although it was not an official body, they did get federal money. But when we got up here, I found there it was hidden in this health education, and with plans to spread it to 16 different districts each year. It was just as wrong, and just as socially wrong, and very unhealthy. Charlotte Iserbyt had sought reasons for puzzling changes she found in the country's attitudes, the media, schools, and culture when she returned from years abroad, while I, on the other hand, had been gradually exposed to the progressive, new, creative changes in society, either by protesting or adapting to them. As a teacher, I had protested social promotion, new grouping methods, the whole word teaching instruction, marking on a curve, intrusive surveys, modern math, faulty textbooks. Each proposed change seemed to be a singular excrescence. I never dreamed that it was part of the plan to remove God from our lives, to weaken families, or to dumb down and stupefy American citizens and foreign students in our colleges and universities. I once wanted a system of education, but there was the evidence. After reading the United States Supreme Court decision regarding a set sectarian prayer, which affected one New York school district, I resisted the Connecticut Attorney General's edict to remove prayer and Bible reading from the classroom. The media and attorney generals of other states expanded it to cover school graduations and public meetings. Where were the Christian clergy? Sitting on their hands? Worried about losing their church's tax-exempt status? And the Christians, were they stunned by the atheists and secular humanists demanding that they exhibit Christian love and tolerance toward them and the wrong programs? Instead of seeking truth, unthinking Christians parrot what they think, what they hear, what they read. I'm happy to announce here and now that student prayer is still constitutional in this country. And a lot of you people raising money to help fight it, they're wrong. It is constitutional. And if you want a verified Christian Law Association, look it up on your computer. Called The Greatest Generation by John Brokaw, my generation was taught the responsibility of active citizenship to ensure the transfer of liberty to succeeding generations, and that each of us should expect to give 1 or 2 years of public service without pay. Although many of my generation were first generations in this country, none of us ever consider themselves one race or another. We're all just happy to be Americans. Of course, we'd been taught by our teachers that we're lucky. We were never going to have to face a war, because the war to end all wars had been won. What went wrong? What signs did I miss? Instead of waiting for someone more knowledgeable, wiser, and authority to speak up, should I have done? In the late spring of '59, faculty meetings plus agitator groups of young people signaled adoption of the humanities curriculum at our Connecticut Teachers College. As one of 3 adult students, they were rare in those days, on the campus, 3 girls approached me during the rushed weeks before my graduation, and they asked me to join in protesting the change. I so regret my refusal to understand what the impending changes and the removal of the philosophy course meant a changing in teaching and education. Instead, I backed away, feeling that one more issue added to the burden of being a wife, mother, housekeeper, and student at graduation activities were just about all I could handle. Now I realize if I'd only done something, I might have slowed it down a bit, the very problems which are plaguing us today. So many changes have been accepted as right and good because parents, taxpayers, Christians, and the general public were not paying any attention. They sent them off in the school bus, welcomed them home, that's it. Are we so impressed with the academic degrees or confused that we fail to check the accountability of our public servants? We're paying them. Don't forget that. And you're also paying for the spotty learning that your children are getting. It's simply callous citizenship and never-inspired, because your job is to see the people you hired do the job. But that can change. You can make it a proactive citizenship, the latest fad, popular, the thing to do. Why not? Think of all the enthusiasm for the Red Sox. My husband and I had always attended school board meetings thinking we should as citizens, and had no trouble down in Connecticut. In fact, they were pleased to have our input. But up here, when I went to a sad 50, we were regarded as spies, troublemakers. Our questions were met with tightened lips, no information. Evidently, only the citizens attended when their child was in trouble or when they wanted a bus route changed. We found out that the Sinclair Act, which made each district superintendent the secretary of the local school board, thereby causing a conflict of interest and ample opportunity for omissions and unconsciously biased reports. Now, rare was a school board member who dared question the superintendent. In many cases, the superintendent, really their high body, because they paid they hired him, they paid his wages, manipulated that school board with almost no input or control by parents or taxpayers. Education suffered. It went downhill even while I was here. And so did children. So they really are at disadvantage. I've had them call me up. Whatever happened, I was a good A student in high school, and they tell me I have to repeat English, math, so forth. That's been happening for years. Well, we suggested they tape their meetings so there'd be no mistake. Who said what and where and when. That sounded very good. They finally did it. But we lost all its value when the unwary school members still decided that they asked the superintendent to keep the tapes for them. I mean, you can erase part of it, you know. All right, solution number 1. We need to elect school board members who will do more than attend meetings, look important, and consider only the stuff that's handed to them, that they're told. Why don't they investigate and find out what laws are on that subject and what has been done in the past, and share them with other people? Now, from the Sinclair Act on, that first established regional school districts, right through to the present charter schools and school choice policy. The Maine legislature has contrived to ignore the state constitution that they proudly swear they're going to protect and permit. I don't think they know what it is. I think they're talking about the federal one. We have a state one, a very fine state constitution. The intervening governors, education commissioners, and members of a legislative oversight committee are likewise guilty of deliberately and repeatedly ignoring their duty and breaking their oaths. Remember, those people swore that. And furthermore, they said, "So help me God." Well, maybe God will have to take care of it. The legislature should indicate a simple cost-saving remedy. They wouldn't want to save money. Number one, listing those duly passed, non-enforced constitutional laws to do with the topic in hand. They have no idea. Half the time they vote, spend time talking about something that really is unconstitutional. Number two, listing those laws and regulations contrary to either federal or state constitution as null and void. Right? We don't hear that, do we? We really should. There are at least 10 laws I can think of that should be null and void. Solution two, it is vital that the law research be done by the legislators. We hired them instead of the office or the committee staff. After all, they should know what they're really talking about and what they're voting on. But they don't. They know what someone told them. And don't forget, your bureaucracy is there year after year without being elected. So you've got to push your people. And I think that's the solution all the way, to inform ourselves and see that the people we hire to do the job do it. In 1978, Guardians of Education for Maine, GEM, we had an acronym, was formed and staffed by non-paid volunteers. We shared documented information with non-informed parents, concerned citizens, and legislators through newsletters, meetings, speaking on radio and TV. We circulated analyses of proposed legislation. And by the way, if you're a Mainer, I hope they haven't changed it, your town clerk can get the copies of proposed legislation for nothing. And when they get them, ask to have them to go over. And then I used to throw them. It was something I thought the real estate people should learn. And I'd underline something and hand it off to them and so forth. And then I'd write the others for my newsletter. It really is a wonderful way to get information out.
Bettina was so really, I hope this is on tape. I mean, the Democrats, the legislature just loved her. They didn't agree with her on everything, but she did all their homework for them. She read all the bills. She would do critiques, what it really means and all. And you had a lot of good friends in the Maine legislature. She would never tell you that, but isn't that amazing? She did. How many years did you do that?
Oh gosh, at least 10. Yeah. Well, we circulated those analyses of proposed legislation, organized peaceful protests, protested the gradual removal of the parents' rights to refuse immunization shots for children, and were ready to work with public, private, religious, and home schools. We spoke at Bowdoin College on request, and while there, I must tell you, I was able to introduce something that happened to be Education 101, and I had supervised beginning teachers before. And I asked them if they knew about anything to teach chastity, and everyone's horrified. I said, of course, we have a law. It's still on the books. You never know it from the legislature. Yes, it is Title 20, Education, Part 2, Chapter 111, Public Schools, Section 1221. The teaching of virtue and morality. Instructors of youth in public and private institutions shall use their best endeavors to impress on the minds of the children and youth committed to their care and instruction the principles of morality and justice and a sacred regard for truth, love of country, humanity, and animals, the great principles of humanity as illustrated by kindness to birds and animals, and regard for all factors which contribute to the well-being of man, industry, frugality, chastity, moderation, and temperance, no drinking, and all other virtues which ornament human society, and to lead those under their care as their ages and capacities admit into a particular understanding of the tendency of such virtues to preserve and protect a republican constitution, secure the blessings of liberty, and promote their future happiness. That has been on the books since 1820.
It still is?
Oh, yes. I've been Yellow Belly for years. And I want you to know that I think if you want to look it up in the law library, it's under the Law in a Nutshell series. It's an excellent series if you want to get background on laws. And the law library, your county may have one as well, they may have it, but they have it in Augusta anyway. So after I read that to them, the teacher was very embarrassed. But just think about it. Every teacher who comes into a state should know what the law should be. That means that we're being unfair, and the teachers' union, or whatever you want to call it, should be advising their people of it. We don't want to be lawbreakers, not one of us. But we are. And they're doing it time after time. And they will as long as you people let them.
That's right.
Well, in 1977, I had been thoroughly ignorant of secular humanism. But Charlotte introduced me to Humanist Manifesto in 1933, written by John Dewey, the famed Columbia University education guru, whose disciples spread his message far and wide. The second Humanist Manifesto in 1973 left no doubt that it was anti-God, anti-Christianity, and anti-Old Testament Judaism. No wonder I hadn't read it before. Yet the humanist intellectuals had been influenced me and other educators and other teachers through the articles in our published professional publications. All that time, and I didn't know it. Jem initiated the Maine Legal Defense Fund, which aided state-harassed citizens acting on their Christian beliefs. Our landmark cases were the homeschool case of Blount versus Maine, which went to the Supreme Court of Maine. And by the way, they're all still homeschooling. And the other one was the AIDS case of Abbott versus Bragdon, which reached the United States Supreme Court. And there are many other cases. A lot of people who were foster parents and were taking the children to church or something, they were after. For several years, the Department of Human Services, this is Maine's department, persecuted homeschoolers, taking children from parents under allegations of child abuse. And they wouldn't know where they were. They wouldn't tell them. It was sometimes weeks before you could find them. And making it necessary for Jim to have as many as 5 safe houses. I felt I was living American history over again. We had lists of things for parents to keep packed in suitcases, and they were not to let anyone know except me, because they let a member of the family know, and they say, I'm a Christian, I've got to tell the truth. You know, I know they are. So if they don't know, they can't. And no one thought about me. I was just down on the shore, minding my own business. But we did have some very serious cases. In some cases, we even sent out of the country. So that's why we had to go and get into the courts afterwards. And it was nice because I remember Mark Finks. Mark and I were discussing homeschooling on the radio. And the next morning, I got a phone call, and a lawyer called, and he offered to do it pro bono. And I will say, we didn't have much money. We just had an issue, and other people believed in them, and they came and helped. It was wonderful. And we even had, I can't think of her name, up in Oakland. She was a nurse and taking care of her 2 children, and been deserted by her husband. And she was homeschooling her children, taking care of her sick mother and so forth. On TV one night, they had her arrested and putting on handcuffing her in front of her children. It was terrible. We finally all got together, and the Department of Human Services, I don't know how they got the money, but they found out where her husband was out in California, brought him here so he could claim the children, because he wasn't a Christian. So finally, some of us put some money together, and we put the children in a Christian school. And we finally got rid of him. But then we went ahead and formed the Christian Legal Defense Fund, and we helped a great many people after that. I found myself dealing with people I didn't know.
Was this in the 1970s?
In the 80s, and yeah. Jem worked twice to prevent the passage of demands for a constitutional convention. They always have a new reason. In fact, for the first time, I made a promo thing that went around to different stations and went on, and it was a lot of fun to do, only because we couldn't get the fellow that we wanted to. And the one wonderful thing was, I didn't know what to do. I'd done everything I could think of, and I asked the Lord for help. And I went up to the house from the office to get lunch, and the phone rang. And a woman, I can't even remember her name now, her husband was a dentist in Long Island, and someone had told her, we're fighting him. And she said, I have $1,500. Use it, please. I sent it to Change afterwards, but it was fun. But isn't it something? It's amazing what will happen. Well, while we were resisting secular humanism, another one came along, anti-humanism, which was insinuating itself into education and our daily lives by stripping humans of their transcendent value and reducing people to being mere things to be studied, reshaped, and controlled. It was very slow to be identified because it came in several different forms, like eugenics, population control, and radical environmentalism. And they are ever ready to sacrifice human life and even our well-being in order to reach what they consider goals. The elderly and the children, even the unborn children, are their primary expendable targets. Consider the frequent vaccination drives with different reasons given for getting the same vaccines. Now they want to vaccine the grandparents so they can't give the disease to children. And they never gave any credit for the fact that a mother's immunity is transferred to a child for the first year and a half anyway. And all those things that put in those little bodies just developing, it's criminal. It's no wonder we have ADD and ADHD. I really think it's all the others. So we've been fighting that up in fact, it's a funny thing. I was up in Augusta fighting the last time when, of course, they assigned it to the education people. They know everything about vaccines. And so the doctor came in and talked. And I came in and I researched it all and told what was. And the people on the education committee, they just ignored me, completely ignored me. And yet I had all the facts and figures. And she had said that they shouldn't deny the chance for our children to get those experimental vaccines before anyone else. And they nodded their heads as if they were being very sensible. Can you imagine? Guinea pigs? I went home from there and I had my stroke. It wasn't funny, I did. But nowadays, we have to worry about the Codex Alimentarius, food code, aerial spraying, even the conservation easements to do with land trusts. You have to distrust that too. And global warming. In other words, all of you included. Get rid of God, next get rid of us, and then the animals, the bugs can take over. The capstone achievement of DEM has been Shah Isbi's opus, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, and its revised abridged edition. It stands as a great and continuing contribution to the knowledge and understanding needed to return God and truth to education and the people of the world. For some time, I was head of the Committee of Correspondence for Maine, and that was like reliving American history again. So really what you people are going to do when you get through here, you're really making American history again. And I think we're all counting on your brains and your experience and your wonderful spirit to find a way to do it. Thank you. That's it.